Sylvia Plath was born on October 27, 1932, in Boston, Massachusetts, to Ariella Schrober and Otto Plath. Her father was a college professor at Boston University who taught both German and biology with a focus on the study of bees, and her mother was a master's student at the university. When Sylvia was just 8 years old, her father died due to complications with diabetes. He had been a stern father, whose authoritarian attitude in his death drastically shaped Sylvia and her poems, one of them being her poem, Daddy. Plath's interest in writing emerged at an early age, and she started out by keeping a journal. At the age of 11, she was journaling and publishing her poetry in regional magazines and newspapers, but her first national published piece was in the Christian Science Monitor in 1950. After graduating from high school, Plath won a scholarship to Smith College in 1950. Sylvia was an exceptional student and spent time in New York City during the summer of 1953, working for Mademoiselle magazine as a guest editor. While working for the magazine and going to school, Plath developed depression and was treated with electroshock therapy, which she would later describe as being a horrific experience in her poem, The Hanging Man. On August 24th, Sylvia wrote a note to her mother stating, "Have gone out for a long walk, we'll be home tomorrow." Instead of going on a walk, Sylvia stole a bottle of her mother's sleeping pills and crawled underneath her house and lost consciousness. For 2 days, police searched frantically for Plath. On August 26, she was found underneath the house. After this, Sylvia was sent to a psychiatric ward at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, where she received insulin shock treatment, which made the user go into a coma-like state. After this, Plath was sent to McLean Hospital in Belmont, where she continued her insulin shock treatments along with extensive therapy. Plath returned to Smith College and finished her degree in 1955 after being released from McLean in 1954. After graduating, Plath moved to Cambridge, England on the Fulbright Scholarship. In early 1956, she attended a party and met the English poet Ted Hughes. She and Ted fell in love over their mutual love of poetry. The two were married on June 16, 1956. While married, they were particularly fascinated with the undead and Ouija boards. Plath returned to Massachusetts in 1957 and began studying with Robert Lowell. Her first collection of poems, Colossus, were published in 1960 in England and 2 years later in the United States. She returned to England where she gave birth to her children, Frida and Nicholas Hughes. In Sylvia Plath's later life, she dedicated herself to her children and her writing. However, in 1962, Plath discovered that her husband, Ted Hughes, was cheating on her with Assia Gutmann-Wevel. That winter, Plath developed a deep depression and wrote most of the poems that would comprise her most famous book, Ariel. In 1963, Plath also published a semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar, under the pseudonym Victoria Lucas.
Dying is an art, like everything else. I do it exceptionally well. I do it so it feels like hell. I don't do it so it feels real. I guess you could say I have a call. It's easy enough to do it in a cell. It's easy enough to do it and stay put. It's the theatrical comeback in broad day to the same place, the same face, the same brute, amused shout. A miracle that knocks me out. There is a charge. For the eyeing of my scars, there is a charge. For the hearing of my heart, it really goes. And there is a charge, a very large charge, for a word or a touch, or a bit of blood, or a piece of my hair or my clothes. So, Herr Doctor. So, Herr Enemy. I'm your opus. I'm your valuable, the pure gold baby that melts into a shriek. I turn and burn. Do not think I underestimate your great concern. Ash, you poke and stir. Flesh, bone, there's nothing there. A cake of soap, a wedding ring, a gold filling. Herr God, Herr Lucifer, beware, beware. Out of the ash I rise with my red hair, and I eat men like air.